Right. Welcome. My name is Jason Murphy. Yeah, feel free. There's other questions over here too. My name is Jason Murphy, and this is the Rebel Dharma Group, Wednesday night. Glad you're here. Those of you online, those of you in the room. Yeah. Is there anyone new to the group that wants to introduce themselves?
I'm Scott.
Great. Welcome, Scott. How about online? Okay. There's probably some new people that just don't want to speak up, and that's all right. This group's small enough that I know whether you've been here before. Mute. Okay, wonderful. All right, well, I've been doing some thinking in just kind of in the understanding and my own reflection on what's been kind of happening in the world and in the news. And, we can get really pissed off about it all. We can. It's pretty easy to get pissed off about it all. Shootings and rights being stripped from us, and just all of it. Greed, hatred, and delusion playing itself out. Political kind of corruption, and it's just it's so can feel so overwhelming at times, can feel disheartening, and from a Buddhist perspective, this has been happening. This is samsara. Samsara is this cycle of birth and death, this cycle of suffering and awakening from suffering, and that it's strongly rooted in our relationship to greed, hatred, and delusion, and seeing greed, hatred, and delusion around us. And sometimes it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be outraged, and then what? And it's okay to march, and it's okay to protest, and it's okay to vote your political view, and then what? And so I wanted to just kind of address that from a kind of a Buddhist perspective today. And I want to start off by reading some teachings from the Buddha, because he was a pretty wise guy. I mean, he knew some shit. And, in the time of the Buddha, corruption, greed, racism, rampant, sexism. I don't think body politics was kind of in the same, but there was definitely suppression, oppression of women and women's rights and women's bodies. And there was definitely wanton, kind of murder over land or, perceived nobility, or, people feeling better than another group, and throughout history. I mean, we're talking 2,500 years ago. And that the Buddha's kind of reflection to this is, this shit has to stop. And what can we do to address it? What can we do individually to work with it? And so he would speak out. That's one of the things we can do. We can speak out. We can talk about it. So I'm just going to read, this is from the Dhammapada, which is known as the eloquent or poetic teachings of the Buddha. Look how he abused me, beat me, how he threw me down and robbed me. Live with such thoughts and live in hate. Look how he abused me, beat me, and threw me down and robbed me. Abandon such thoughts and live in love. In this world, hatred never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. You too shall pass away. Knowing this, how can you quarrel? And I want to read another one. These are kind of reflections before we start our meditation today. This one's called Joy. Again, from the Dhammapada. Live in joy, in love, even among those who hate. Live in joy, in health, even among the afflicted. Live in joy, in peace, even among the troubled. Look within. Be still, free from fear and attachment, and know the sweet joy of living in the way. From the kind of Buddhist perspective, living in the way is it's a way of talking about the path, the practice. How can we find joy and freedom in our hearts, in our mind, even among all the bullshit that's happening and continues to happen and will continue to happen? People will continue to get shot. There will continue to be racism. World peace is probably not going to happen. There's, wars raging. Some of them we hear about. I'm not saying this as a way of just give up. Definitely not what I'm kind of posing. Valerie, can you mute yourself? Thank you. But how do we navigate? How do we navigate and sometimes it feels personal, and sometimes it feels justified to be righteously angry. Sometimes it feels like the only appropriate thing to do. And I feel like, we all have to kind of navigate what that means for us and what's it actually doing to our own hearts and minds. I've worked quite a bit with activists. And I've never been a huge activist, definitely marched and speak out and will fight against racism and sexism and all the isms, including adultism and ableism and classism. So many isms. From the Buddhist perspective, we utilize the heart practices, the Brahma Viharas, as a ground for when we feel groundless, as a support when I feel like the grind of this fucking life, feels overwhelming. Or when we're so angry that we can't think straight. This is, something I've been pretty open with my own experiences of working with anger and, from a young age. And I'll tell you what, I felt so angry because I felt so disempowered. And anger was the thing that I could like hold on to for a long time and fueled me, and often fueled me in not healthy ways, you know. So I want to work with what's called metta, and I guess I'll just go through the four foundations of, I mean, the four Brahma Viharas, and then we'll do some practice in regards to metta. Metta means loving kindness, or it actually means friendliness, or my favorite translation is positive regard. And it's really about learning how can we develop some friendliness for our own afflictive emotions, you know, for our own greed and our own hatred or ill will or resentment, or how can we develop some relationship to it where it's not either feeding it or repelling against it, which is, you know, the basic tenets of Buddhism. Right? When we grasp, we get caught. When we repel, we get caught. So how do we find the middle way of having some relationship with our experience, with our feeling? One that's not grasping or aversion. So the kind of foundational practice is this positive regard. Can we begin to develop positive regard within our own hearts and minds, and also within the world? And one of the things about Buddhism or about meditation is that oftentimes people talk about, like, Buddhists, they're so passive, you know, just like, oh, life is suffering. You know, you just got to meditate your way through it and go to these meditation groups and be silent. And no, it's fucking revolutionary and can motivate really wise intention and action and speech. And it is engaged because we may start with engaging with our own shit, you know, our own difficulties, our own challenges, our own traumas, our own worries, our own fears, our own minds. And then there is a natural, this has been my experience anyway, there's a natural growing out where, you know, over years, beginning to just care more about the rest of humanity. When I was stuck in an anger kind of, you know, reaction, I didn't care much about the rest of humanity. I barely cared about myself. And so that quality to me has been revolutionary. That this is the inner rebellion. You know? And we can get so caught up in the, you know, the outside world and what everyone's doing wrong. You know, you ever get into that? Like, everyone is doing it wrong. Yeah. And you got the idea of how it can be done better, more efficient, more kind. So sometimes, you know, we just need to pause, look within. I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent of the first one, but I'll just run through the other ones quickly, and then we'll go back to and work with some of this as practice. You know, compassion, karuna, this caring about the suffering of others. So without the foundation of positive regard, then it's really hard to access compassion for our own suffering, and compassion for the suffering of others or the suffering in the world. As a matter of fact, a lot of times people talk about, you know, accessing compassion in the early stages and feeling really overwhelmed by it, especially if we've been closed off, if we've repelled the suffering, our own and the suffering of others. And there's this, there's this kind of opening when we can open. I'm not sure everyone's like this, but I've was definitely experienced this where then, just weeping or just like overwhelmed with the amount of suffering that really is present. And compassion is what I love about compassion is not codependent. Compassion is not taking on the suffering of other people or other civilizations or groups, or compassion is about care. So it's this idea of one of the ways it's described, karuna is the Pali word, and it literally means the quivering of the heart towards the suffering of others and towards our own suffering. And it's really hard to just jump to compassion, that word gets thrown around a lot. It's hard to just jump to compassion without a foundation of positive regard. Developing that for ourselves. So to balance, so those two work together. Metta, or loving kindness, positive regard, friendliness towards our aversive or afflictive emotions, thoughts, behaviors even. And then the compassion. So first we're looking at the goodness, the kindness within ourselves and within the world. And then we're looking at the suffering with a balanced heart. Then the next is known as, I call it selfless joy. Sometimes people call it sympathetic joy. And this is looking at, now we've looked at the suffering, let's look at the joys in this life. There's this, I don't remember if it's Chinese or Tibetan, this phrase, that can we be present with the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 suffering or 10,000 sorrows, joys and sorrows of this life. Which then leads to the next Brahma Vihara, or heart practice, known as equanimity, where everyone wants to be. Some people, not everyone actually, some people don't want to have an equanimous heart and mind. They're generally not at a Buddhist meditation group. Equipoise. It's not disconnected. A lot of times people think, oh, if I meditate, and I actually thought this. I thought, before I started doing heart practices, I thought, I'm going to learn to meditate so I can shut my mind off and I can not have to fucking care. So like neutral, I want a neutrality. And there are some concentration practices, and this is the teaching that the Buddha discovered himself. Jhana practices that really we can absorb into the mind and get super kind of lost in the wisdom aspects. And I kind of wanted that. It was like they call it a spiritual bypass. And mindfulness helps us, and the heart practices help us to stay engaged. And so just kind of talk a little bit about that, just that model, and as a teacher, and just kind of being aware of, and just as a fucking human in the world, being aware of just all the crazy shit that's happening. The laws and the politics and the racial divides. Speaking out about people's rights. I feel like the most appropriate thing for me to teach is Metta, loving kindness. And so I'd like to, because I feel like it strengthens us. So that's the practice tonight. So we're going to shift into that. Before I do that, any kind of questions about any things I've said so far? Please.
When you were saying about like being overwhelmed by that at an earlier point in your thing, you know, I'm old and I felt that way a lot. And in more recent years, my personal solution is I got overwhelmed, you know, trying to think like, oh, how do you fix all these things in the world? And I came down to, well, I can't. So I can make my corner better.
Mm-hmm.
So I can be generous with my time. I can be generous with my money. I can be generous, like try, you know, I'm from New York, so I'm like, I've got judgmental sarcasm in my DNA and, you know, not be that, and work at that. And for me personally, that was my solution to that. It's my corner. I can make my corner of the world better. I can make it better for the people immediately around me, what I'm involved with, and not think like I can't stop the war in Ukraine. I can't stop some idiot from shooting up everything, but I can talk to the people around me about racism. And somebody needs help, you know, it's like I can answer the phone at 11 at night, even if I'm tired. If there's somebody who needs to talk, I can do that. Those are the things I can do. And that gave me a feeling of control, you know, illusion of control.
Yeah, and some hope.
And some hope.
Sure.
And yeah, so for me, that's the solution to feeling so overwhelmed.
Yes.
When you say that you approach people with friendliness and kindness, is that something that you actually feel, or is it something that you have to train and get?
Are you asking for me or for in general? Yeah.
You have to go, oh, that guy's but
I'm gonna fake it till I make it.
Kind of, yeah.
So that's the question was like, do you just fake that shit till you actually feel it? Yes. Yes, you do. And even if it's just like repeating the phrase, which is what we're going to do in a second, repeating the phrases, which is what we're doing. We're training the mind to incline towards positive regard. And there was, and still are moments, but there was many years where I didn't have any positive regard, and least of all for myself. And so that's kind of what I mean when I'm saying, like, so we're bringing this in to condition our own hearts and minds, not trying to change the rest of the world. That's not going to fucking happen. There's going to be assholes everywhere, forever. But we can choose to not be an asshole through practice. So that is what I'm saying. And perhaps if we think of ourselves less as an asshole or angry or, you know, whatever the afflictive kind of emotion is there, or whatever it is that we think negatively about ourselves, if we can begin to create that change within ourselves, we actually might begin to see the world differently. That's the hypothesis, you know, but see for yourself. We have a question here. Shannon, go ahead, and then I'll get to
you. Jason, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you for bringing up this topic and just opening the conversation. It's appreciated, and I don't think it's talked about enough. So my question for you is in regards to people that seem to use the practice sometimes as a spiritual bypass to not get engaged and to sit back and be like, oh, well, it's just occurring. And I've had a really hard time wrapping my brain around that, because for me, the practice and the path have always been about rebellion and revolution and taking care of people and actively participating in it.
Mhm.
I'm trying to be able to find compassion for those that I believe are still in a state of delusion. And so my question is, am I being judgmental and thinking of it as being in a delusional state, or is it actually just part of greed, hatred, and delusion with the mindset?
I love that question. We're all fucking delusional, right? To what degree, you know? And I actually think, like, so the question that I caught there at the end, and I thank you for appreciating, I'm glad that you're here for this conversation. And the part that I caught, the question there at the end is it judgmental to basically kind of say, you know, keep coming back, you know, or like, you know, they're meeting this moment with the best of their capacity, and may they, you know, be free from suffering. Even just acknowledging, is it judgmental to see the delusion? I don't think it's, I think it depends on the intention, but I don't think it's judgmental necessarily to see the delusion. I think it's actually can be clear seeing, and can help us access compassion. Yeah. So let's try it. Oh, you had a question.
Can you talk a little bit more about compassion not being codependent?
I will, but I'm not going to do it right now. All right, because I do want to move into. I want to stay with the first of the four in my, but I will afterwards. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, where you can feel relaxed and alert. Sounds in your phones or other devices. But I'm just taking a few breaths. I'm kind of connecting in. And just kind of scanning through the body from head to feet, feet to head, you know, anything that I just spoke about or some of the questions that came up. What's here? What's here in the body? What's here in the mind? Just acknowledging that with a breath or two. And then in some way, aiming your attention towards this place within all of us that wishes to be happy. Like truly happy, content. Seeing if there's a way to access this intention or this sense of well-being. And even just checking in, what's my level of positive regard for myself? How much friendliness is present in this heart? in this mind. And not from a place of judgment, but really just kind of taking inventory, taking stock. And then imagining yourself at a time when you really needed some friendliness. Perhaps you were a child, perhaps it was earlier today, last week. And the invitation is to give yourself these wishes of well being. I wish you well. So I'll use a few phrases. We're going to work through some phrasing. And the meditation here is to continue the phrases as the meditation object. This first phrase, may I feel safe. The full phrase, may I feel safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I feel safe. Just repeating that phrase in your mind, in your heart. May I feel content. May I be content and happy. May I be content. Over and over again, each phrase as we move through. May I be content. May I be healthy and strong in mind and body. May I be healthy and strong in mind and body. May I be healthy. Next phrase. May I live with ease and comfort of well-being. May I live with ease. May I feel safe. Or just silently saying the word safe to yourself. Sometimes dropping the words and just feeling into the word safe or content is enough. For others, using the full phrase will be helpful to calm the mind. See for yourself. May I feel safe. May I be content. Contented. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. perhaps taking one phrase, safe or content, healthy, ease, and just working with the one that resonates the most with you, the one that's the most in need right now. And when we feel ready, just begin to bring into your mind's eye, just imagining someone you love and care for. A friend, a mentor, a family member, teacher. And wish them the same well being. May you feel safe. May you be content. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Seeing this loved one, this mentor, traditional term is benefactor. Someone who you being in relationship with them has benefited you in a positive way. May you feel safe. May you be content. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Seeing them receiving these blessings these wishes for safety, ease, and contentment. Extending these same wishes back to you. As they receive the blessings of your wishes. Extending these same wishes back to your own heart and mind. Safe, content, healthy, ease, as you continue to develop this positive regard for our own hearts and minds, for our own relationship to our afflictive emotions or thoughts, behaviors. Can also begin to extend out in all directions, starting with this room. Those in front of you, behind you, to the left or to the right, all around. Anyone in this room, those on the Zoom, and in your homes. May we feel safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you feel safe. May you be content. Wishing outward in all directions. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And even further still, expanding out, those in your communities, those in your neighborhoods, your cities, those known and unknown to you. May you feel safe. May you be content. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Expanding out even further in all directions. Those known and unknown to us. Those close or near to our hearts, even those far away. Sending this wish of positive regard to those who piss us off. May you feel safe. May you be healthy. May you be content. May you live with ease. And for just a few more moments, connecting to all those practicing this positive regard, this metta, this loving kindness, friendliness, all over the world. And know that they are sending these wishes of happiness and contentment to you, to your heart, to your mind. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is have you guys break into some groups, twos or threes, and just have a little kind of informal discussion. What was that like? What was that experience like for you? The discussion prior, the readings, the practice. And then those of you in the room or in the Zoom, I'm going to also put you guys in some groups. Please attend the groups. You must be present to win. Go ahead. I want you guys just turn to someone, get groups of 2 or 3, and I'll put you guys. All right. We'll see you in a minute. It's happening. You guys are going to go there.
Oh,
Good. Thank you guys. Alan Tracy. Michael Tracy.
thank you.
Turn on the camera and the audio. There we go. Okay. Does anyone want to share what came up? Either, not speaking for others, but the commonalities or there are, yeah. There's a
Sorry.
spider. It's okay.
I felt like I needed to share.
You weren't the,
There it goes.
you weren't the only one. Yeah, we've been having some insect devas coming to join the Dharma talks recently. There was like a locust or something. Noah called it a cockroach, but it wasn't a cockroach. Anyway, that's considered like a what was it? Like a divine, an auspicious occasion when the spiders come down to check out the Dharma talk. Right. Some would say. Okay, thoughts, reflections, what came up for people about the practice, about the discussion beforehand? Just briefly, I'm not going to get into a deep discussion about it, but yeah.
Your own life and create your own problems. Just a word like
Mhm. I love it. Yeah, I love that. May I be at ease. May I live with ease. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. Sometimes that's all that I'll use. It's just that phrase, or just the word. Yeah, just the word ease. Great. I'm glad you had that experience. Mhm.
I was having a hard time. I felt unusual, like warmth and comfort at the bottom of the ocean and
Like sending it back to you, you mean?
I don't know if I had a premonition, but it feels like I started thinking about how many people in the world are guilty right now. Like when you were saying it, I don't know, but you probably said it as one thing. But then all of a sudden it was like, oh, they might be thinking the same shit. Wow. That's dope.
Yeah, good. Cool. Success.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Nice. Yeah, that was my experience too. Like some teacher on some retreat fucking said that one time, and I was like, crack, like something just cracked open, and I was like, holy shit. There's like, I don't even know how many, 3 billion people that are sending me love and kindness every day. Chanting, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings be at ease, and it just helped me to ease into it. Yeah. So great. I'm glad that you had that experience as well. What about? So how about you, Mike?
Thanks, Jason. I think the reading at the beginning was good to investigate and reflect on, like looking at, like past behavior or like living the practice in the present and like investigating that. And then like, I really feel like and I love the talk on engagement too. And I feel like the Brahma Viharas are a good way to do engagement, to not, potentially get hit with a second arrow, to kind of be equanimous and then, also you can kind of bring the Four Noble Truths in and, be cognizant that they're suffering, and there's a way out of suffering, and then realizing that clinging and craving is suffering, and we can cling and crave to value judgments or You know, I think it's just kind of realizing there's going to be suffering and there's going to be unskillful people, and that we can like engage and then engage with kindness and compassion and equanimity and kind of avoid like siege mentality. And then it's like there's other teachers that talk about the 3 marks of existence, like all phenomena is unsatisfactory and everything's impermanent, everything's changing. So it's just like
All of the Dharma. Let's just unpack it all.
no, but that's what happens to me
Yeah.
though, because like one thing leads to another. Like it's just
Yeah, of course.
it's not disparate. It all becomes
Yeah.
one thing. Like there's interconnectivity. So that's just how my wheels were spinning. And
Wonderful. And of course, and that is, I mean, that it is the eightfold path. They fold into each other. And when we're practicing one aspect, even like this positive regard, the foundation of the heart practices, compassion will, it's not like we have to then switch to compassion. Oftentimes compassion for our own suffering or the suffering of others will naturally emerge, you know, so, or insight into anicca, or, you know, to impermanence, right? Or, you know, the reality of suffering versus pain, you know, also, yes. And even just that, like what you were saying, like this kind of, when we use the word ease, like, you know, how important is it for me to be right in this moment, you know, or whatever, you know, I don't know what it was that, you know, you were exactly kind of working with, but the idea of like, oh, like, is there some selfing that I'm doing in this, you know, holding to, clinging to an opinion of right and wrong? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully, right. Yeah. Yeah, good. So I want to read, Nyanaponika Thera is a German-born Sri Lankan monk, and he talked about the Brahma Viharas and their benefit. And here is a couple of his, which I think is appropriate for what we're talking about engaging, and how do we engage appropriately, and how do we, you know, rebel against our own tendencies towards greed, hatred, and delusion. These 4 attitudes are said to be excellent or sublime because they are the right or ideal way of conduct towards all living beings. They provide, in fact, the answer to all situations arising from social contact. They are the great removers of tension, the great peacemakers in social conflict, the great healers of wounds suffered in the struggle of existence. They level social barriers, build harmonious communities, awaken slumbering nobility long forgotten, revive joy and hope long abandoned, and promote human brother or sisterhood against the forces of egotism. And I just like that. I just feel like it kind of encapsulates, this shit's important and it's useful. And so hopefully you participate in this practice. So there was a question earlier about, I kind of, as I was going through the Four Noble Truths, there was a question about compassion. And like, I think I said, you know, compassion from a Buddhist perspective isn't codependent, right? And that perked up. You want to say a little bit more about what your question is about that, or you just would like me to say more about it? And, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I feel like codependency, oftentimes people feel like I have to, you know, like if I have compassion or even empathy, I have to do something. I have to remove something. Oftentimes, in my view, compassion can be misunderstood as being codependent, taking away the pain or the suffering of others. That's my job. That's what I have to do. Or protecting others. Now, there is a certain level of protection which we can, try to do in the world, right? Speaking out. This is the engagement part. But being attached to an outcome of the way things should be is generally not helpful.
Similar to loving with an expectation of return, loving freely with an expectation.
Yeah, I mean, how that can be problematic. Yeah, for sure. In the same way as like, if I am caring about you and you're not caring enough about yourself, then I get upset. Or I really want you to make changes in your life.
The person that says, you know what I've done for you.
Yeah, well, that's guilt-ridden, right? Yes, so there's a controlling nature to codependency that I think people misunderstand about compassion. And what I was saying earlier also is this idea of was it empathy? Yeah, this idea. Oh, I lost it. I lost the idea. I don't know where it went. Yeah. I mean, it'll come back as soon as I stop thinking about it. But there's another point that I was going to make is this idea of empathy. And like some people are like, well, I'm just too empathetic, or I have too much empathy. We all have empathy. Just like we all have the ability to care about others, and we all do care about others, but sometimes it's just very specific. I only care about this person and not that person, right? And what I love about the compassion practice here, or I only care about this group's suffering, but not all of the suffering that is being experienced. Or I only care about externalized suffering, but not internalized suffering. Yeah. So I just feel like the kind of sometimes the idea of compassion or the idea of empathy, they get a little misunderstood. So it's can I care without having to control?
And can you have it for difficult people without having the implication that you forget about damage that they cause? Like, can you have that positive regard for them as a human being despite how their behavior is?
Yeah. Which, depending on the relationship, can be either difficult or easy, right? Or how attached we are to our view, whatever that view is, of right and wrong, or good or bad. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? Please.
I was sharing earlier when we were in the smaller breakout groups that the loving practice has really transformed my life. And it's both allowed me to be less triggered by people or situations, but also when I do get in that moment of feeling triggered, that I am also able to have love for them and compassion. And I used to think I had compassion, but all I was doing was taking on people's stuff and wanting to control the outcome because I didn't want to focus on my own pain. And so gaining access to this practice has really taught me what compassion truly is. So I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's like a natural kind of leaning into what we call equanimity. And that's the other piece of this, whether it's compassion or even joy and even positive regard.
It's a work in progress all the time.
Oh, for sure. But that idea of like I can really wish well for somebody. I can really care and want that this person to have a positive outcome, whatever that is. But I can't control it or make it happen, or even take responsibility for anything other than maybe my part. If there was a part. It doesn't mean that we don't or that we're not moved into service. Compassion to me is what compelled the Buddha to get up out of his blissed out enlightened state and teach for 45 years. Compassion for the delusion that was rampant and is still pretty rampant in the world. Maybe even more so. I mean, who knows? I don't know. Please.
Lisa, I'd just be curious of your thoughts with our new art and these two fierce Tibetan deity monsters on either side of you, that are deities of fierce compassion. And we don't have it as much in Theravada of, like.
Oh, is that who that is? Mahakala?
Those are both Mahakala, which are both the Tibetan.
I thought it was
deity
Mara.
of fierce compassion.
Okay.
And so I would just be curious what you would say about where's the place for like passionate ferocity in a non-attached, compassionate way.
Yeah. So first of all, I thought it was Mara. I thought they were Mara, and I had a whole teaching about how that was Mara, and this was. But so.
Mara, I think these are Mahakala.
Okay. Well, I love the Mahakala imagery, right? And I often, it's this idea of fierce compassion. I think it's like speaking truth to power, is like, standing up for yourself and for those who are. So it's like not worried about stepping on toes. If the intention, from my view, the intention is out of compassion, out of care, out of, look, I might have to say some tough things to you. I think same thing with loving kindness, right? Which is why I like use the positive regard, and I mean, you and I personally have had many of these challenging conversations, and that's always been out of love and compassion, I mean, most of the time. one moment. And so this idea of courageous compassion, I felt like that it is that what I was just pointing to. It's the courageous compassion that motivated the Buddha to continue to teach over 45 years. I don't know if I have much more to say about it than that. Yeah. There was yes.
The poet Robert Frost said that our desire to love is really our desire to be irresistibly loved. And I was curious, when you talk about compassion, is that also like a narcissistic thing? You're compassionate because you want compassion to be and the world to be that. So is it all self-driven? Or that I always get hung up on that.
I mean, I think that's a great question. I think the idea of like, is it altruistic or is it narcissistic? Yeah, right. Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I definitely think like that's that can be that kind of what codependent compassion, right? This kind of miscompassion, or this kind of like I'm gonna be, and same thing with service and with generosity. And I think this is where what I love about Buddhism is that it's kind of pointing us back again and again to, what is our intention here? And I think that people can sense the difference, So that would be one side. The other side would be like, something's better than nothing, back to the fake it till you make it, which is what I did for years. Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, I had zero capacity to have any compassion for my own suffering. And so I really had very little. There was some, especially when I started working like with really challenging teenagers, because I was such a challenging teenager. I had natural compassion for those little crap heads, you know. And in some way, in doing that and in developing that form of compassion for myself, that form of compassion for them and developing that within myself, I began to have the capacity to care a little bit about my own suffering. You know? Sure. So we're just about out of time. So just to say, thank you for your time and attendance. And this center is run completely on the donation of those who attend. And if you're on the Zoom, there's a link. Thanks, Mike, for putting it out. And also, if you're in the room, there's a bowl, you can donate there. And also, if you feel so inclined, you can also donate to me, my teachings, me as a teacher. And you can either PayPal or Venmo my name, Jason Murphy, or No BS Buddhist on Venmo. I think that's probably the only ways you can do that. Yeah. So thank you for your time and attention. And let's just we'll just share in the merit. Yeah. So just gathering kind of all the goodness of our practice, our intention. And first taking that in. All the goodness of our practice. And then in the next exhale, expanding out in all directions. May all beings receive the benefits of our practice. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering.